Good afternoon, Munchkins. Welcome to the Dad Rants once again. And this afternoon, or this morning's discussion is titled The Managerial Philosophy of Subsidiarity. Now, if you like what you hear, please hit the share button at the bottom. If you love what you hear, hit the subscribe button. That allows me to do a whole lot more of these. All right, now that we got that out of the way, let's hit it. Eventually, all of you are going to wind up managing people. In fact, one of you has already achieved the unenviable task of managing others. Having managed others for the better part of 30 years, I have some wisdom to impart that may save you some significant headaches down the road. About 30 years ago, I came across a book that promoted management as a calling. That was like the title of the book. For the life of me, I can't remember the author's name of the book, but I very much remember the book. Now, like most business books that are sold at newspaper airport stands, it was filled with cliches and the usual pseudo-intellectual leftist crap trap. Reading airports business books reminds me of going to the junkyard when I was a kid. You got to sift through a mountain of garbage before you find anything useful. And sometimes you will find something useful, but you must go have the time and the desire to do the digging. So when I was about 8 years old, I remember going to the Portland dump and finding a derailleur that was a perfect fit for my 5-speed bicycle. On a different junkyard adventure, I found a kickstand that was perfect for my 2-speed kickback bicycle that was buried under a couple of blankets. The only difference between the newspaper airport stand and the Portland junkyard is that the airport newsstand didn't smell as bad. At least the last time I was at the Portland airport, it didn't stink. Remember, we are talking about Portland. Anything can happen in Portland. All kidding aside, when you travel for a living, you have the time to do the digging. I can't tell you how many hours I spent waiting at airport terminals for flights. I had the choice of working on the computer or reading airport bookstore material. I exhausted all the good spy novel stuff. I think I've read every Ian Fleming, Robert Ludlum, John le Carre, Tom Clancy novel ever written. I read The Federalist, that's the Hamilton and Madison J book, The Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, The Guns of August by Barbara Tuchman, all on airplanes at airport terminals. I didn't stoop to so low as to read People magazine or Time magazine. You can lose 10 IQ points just from seeing the headlines on those rags. That left me with the so-called business books. Which brings me back to the book I read that prompted management as a calling back in the early 90s. It wasn't a very well written book, but some of the content was intriguing. So I did the hard work of sifting through the garbage to find the jewels. And I did find some jewels. The best jewel I found in this book was actually in the concept of calling management a calling. Let me explain. When we say a profession is a calling, we're implying that the economic compensation is not the only compensation. We're in fact implying that the economic compensation is not even the most important part of the compensation. We are implying that there is an economic sacrifice associated with doing that profession. People who work for a calling are people who are talented enough to be paid significantly more than their chosen profession is offering. These people are working primarily for something other than the money, and that other is something spiritual in nature. We understand that those who become pastors or priests have taken on a calling. We understand that women who become nuns have taken on a calling. We understand that those who go to work for the Peace Corps have taken on a calling. It used to be commonly understood that those who chose to become teachers have taken on a calling. This is no longer true for teachers, as they often earn more money than those who choose not to become teachers. The exception being those who teach in the private sector religious schools, who often earn less than their public school counterparts. You can't call it a calling if your earnings are on par with other professions. This is why a public school teacher no longer qualifies as a calling. One doesn't take on a profession as a calling with the primary objective of earning money. True, these professions do provide an income, but the people who take on these professions are very talented and could choose to work in a profession where they could earn significantly more in the form of income. But they choose to earn less money because their compensation is derived mostly from non-monetary compensation. You might say those earnings are spiritual in nature. The more I thought about the concept of management as a calling, I came to conclude that the philosophy of managing people as a calling should be applied in general to the management of any team. So let me explain that. The pastor has the ability to make a dramatic impact on the lives of the members of the congregation. However, he can only impact people who choose to attend church. Less than 25% of the population attends church on any given Sunday. Therefore, the ability to reach the majority of the population is limited for the pastor. The teacher has a tremendous ability to reach almost every child in the United States. Every child in the United States will be in contact with a teacher until they're 18. Whether homeschooled, private schooled, or public schooled, from the age of 6 through 18, a teacher will be in contact with virtually every kid for 6 to 8 hours a day. But after graduation, that impact ends. After high school graduation, everyone will have a manager, and that manager will be in daily contact with their employees 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year, for as long as that person works. And if they work for the same company, they will be in that situation until they're 65 years of age. And unlike church, the employee must report to work. Around 75% of the population does not attend church on any given Sunday. And there is no earthly financial penalty for not attending church. So the employee has no earthly requirement to see his or her pastor. After graduation, most people never see their teacher again for the rest of their lives. But there is a very steep penalty financially for not attending work. Since the manager will spend more time with people over the course of their lives than either the pastor or the teacher, the manager may be best positioned to impact the life of most people for good or ill than either the teacher or the pastor. So as a manager, I submit to you that you have a duty beyond the scope of the job title to improve the lives of the people who report to you. Here are 2 hot tips that I want to convey to you that will help you to become an exceptional manager, a manager who delivers high value to both your organization and, more importantly, to the people who report to you. When the people you report to tell everyone in their lives that you were by far the best manager that they ever had, that, my friend, is a part of your spiritual compensation. This is far more rewarding than any financial bonus that you will ever get. These hot tips fall into 2 categories. Those categories are the following. A, upside down management. B, the principle of subsidiarity. Let me expand on these 2 concepts, beginning with the upside down management. And as you would that men should do to you, do ye also to them likewise. That's Luke chapter 6, verse 31. Or, if you prefer the golden rule, right, treat people the way that you'd like to be treated. Most people think that the people at the bottom of a company, organization, chart report to the people at the top of the org chart. I submit to you that this is a terrible way to manage a team. I submit to you that you need to flip that chart on its head. Your mindset should be that you work for your employees. If you implement the golden rule, you'll do this naturally. Your mindset should be to provide them with the very best tools that you can so that they can be successful in their position. Your goal should be to provide them with the very best coaching, teaching, and resources available so that they can deliver the best results. Now, this only works if you select high caliber people to be on your team. The art of people selection, that's a whole different rant. But assuming you've selected A caliber talent, you should take on the persona that you work for them. Yes, you'll get a written performance review from your boss. But the real performance review is the unwritten one that you'll get from the people who report to you. If you do this well, your people will run through a brick wall for you. And the reason that they'll run through a brick wall for you is because they know that you will run through a brick wall for them. Never forget that your compensation, your bonus, your promotions, and ultimately your job satisfaction depends entirely on the unwritten performance review issued by your direct reports. Treat them like gold, and they'll give you golden results. And they'll observe your personal moral code in action and desire to emulate it. This desire to emulate your moral code will lead to them asking you questions about that moral code. And the only way that you can answer those questions is by describing your moral code. Some call that evangelization, by the way. The second hot tip involves implementing the concepts of subsidiarity. Let me explain subsidiarity. One of the key principles of Catholic social thought is known as the principle of subsidiarity. This tenet holds that nothing should be done by a larger and more complex organization that could be done as well by a smaller and simpler organization. Put another way, the person closest to the actual work is best positioned to provide ideas on how to improve the work. Perhaps the biggest reason that communism fails is that it is a top-down organizational principle. The people at the top of the hierarchy tell those at the bottom of the hierarchy what to do and how to do it. So the people who know the least about doing the work are directing how the work should be done. This is why the products from communist countries are legendary in terms of their uselessness. During the era of the Soviet Union, its national airline Aeroflot had the highest accident rates of any airline. There was a Yugo dealer who offered a buy one, get one free in order to move this disaster off the car lots. Can you imagine going to buy a car and getting one free? That's how bad the cars were. When those who report to you feel empowered to provide input to you on how they can do their jobs better, the best ideas will be circulating. The people who do the work are best qualified to know how to do that work better. During World War II, the USS Yorktown was badly damaged at the Battle of Coral Sea. This is such a great story. She sailed back to Pearl Harbor in Hawaii for repairs. While she was sailing back, Admiral Nimitz received intelligence that the Japanese were planning to attack the American base at Midway, and he wanted to set a trap for the Japanese. But for the trap to work, he had to have the Yorktown available for the fight. This meant that the crew at Pearl Harbor had 3 days to repair the Yorktown. The engineers informed Admiral Nimitz that it would take at least 3 months for the Yorktown to be battle ready. Admiral Nimitz replied that the crew had 3 days to complete the repairs. To accomplish this task, the manuals were thrown out the window. The how-to was pushed down the ladder to the crew member at the repair site. Each individual welder, electrician, or mechanic evaluated the battle damage on their area of responsibility and did what was required to have that ship ready for battle in 3 days. They turned off the power to the entire island of Hawaii to divert the power to the rebuilding of the Yorktown. When the repairs weren't completed in the required 3 days, they set sail for Midway with the repair crews on board completing repairs while they were on their way to battle. Talk about a can-do attitude. A naval tender sailed alongside the Yorktown to complete the repairs while she was underway to Midway. The Yorktown participated heroically and was instrumental in America's victory at Midway, a victory which proved to be the turning point in the Pacific theater of World War II against the Japanese. That is just one story of many around how the principle of subsidiarity was perhaps the biggest single strategic advantage that the United States had over its adversaries in World War II. By definitions, dictatorships cannot implement the principle of subsidiarity. Questions have to go up the chain of command and back down to the bottom before a decision can be made. The delay caused while waiting for the answers often renders the original question obsolete. This was a massive problem for Hitler, Tojo, Stalin, and Mussolini during World War II. Of course, this principle applies to civilian life as well. So whenever possible, implement the principle of subsidiarity with your team. Not only will you get better results, but you'll get more loyalty from your team because they will know that their input is valued. Imago Dei, and peace out.